when one hears the term English Romantic period? Well, believe it or not, you think, oh, it's an artistic period characterized by a heightened interest in nature, emphasis on the imagination, departure from attitudes and forms of classicism, and rebellion against established social rules and conventions. And you'd be right. Needless to say, the Romantic period of English literature was very glorious. It's very difficult for me to choose only a few of the famous authors of this period, so I had the producers do it. Luckily for me, they picked a few of my favorites. The others I could care less about. Let's begin with Lord Byron. Of course, that was not his real name. I mean, who in their right mind would name their son Lord? I mean, it's ludicrous. Yes. Anyway, his real name was, of course, George Gordon Byron. He led a very depressing childhood because he was very self-conscious about a lame club foot he was born with, and he should have been. It was god-awful, I mean really. Byron had a very interesting life full of bisexual relationships, incestual liaisons, and the such. This led him to leave England in his later years and settle in Geneva. There, he wrote a large amount of his work, and he died before he could finish some of his things. One of Byron's lengthier poems, entitled The Island, is about a group of people on an island. A ship that appeared to be owned by pirates wrecked on the offshore, and now they were stuck there. There's ill ease with the captain of the boat, and one of the more outspoken crew members decided to mutiny, and the story continues as the crew battle for control of the ship. In the end, almost everyone dies, and lessons about violence and wars are taught. The poem is very descriptive, and despite its length, rhymes all the way through. It is truly a remarkable achievement by any standard. But I cannot explain to you the greatness with just words. You must see it! So watch this brief interpretation of Lord Byron's The Island. Enjoy. Mutiny!
Mutiny? No.
Yeah.
Come on.
Sorry.
Alright. Did you drop the knife?
That sucked. Oh, and wasn't that just fabulous? Pirates. Let's continue on our journey. John Keats was born in Fishbury Pavement. No, it's not an insult. It's actually a small town near London. Unfortunately for Keats, his father had a rather cynical sense of humor about where he lived, and London was just too hokey. Eventually, Keats moved in with his grandmother and attended a very good public school. In 1810, his mother died of consumption. No one knows exactly what she consumed, but whatever it was too much, and it wasn't very good. His grandmother then left him to two guardians who made him the apprentice of a surgeon, but before he finished his apprenticeship, he left for London because he got into a quarrel with his master. Quarrel. It's a great word, isn't it? Nice work, writers. While being an assistant doctor, he regained interest in literature. This led him to write quite a bit in his later years. Sadly, Keats only lived to be 26 years old, and he died of consumption, like his mother. People need to stop consuming bad things, I believe. It was difficult to choose just one example of Keats' writing to emphasize, but luckily the producers came through again, and they chose To Homer. This is a peculiar piece, mostly because the character of Homer was not even created until 1989, and everyone knows Homer Simpson hardly deserves to be remembered in a poem. He needs a monument. Of course, I'm kidding. The poem is obviously about the blind poet who apparently wrote the famous Greek tragedies, the Iliad and the Odyssey. Although I fail to see how a blind person could write such long, rich material, but I'm not here to argue that. The poem is more of an ode to the great poet, and Keats is very humble in how he praises him. He explains nicely how Homer's blindness marks the second sight of sorts, and allows him to see more than just a story in words. It is written well because it deserves to be held high among other poems. The references to nature and the focus on small details help make this more than just a simple poem. And all these things are characteristics of the time period. Keats refers to many Greek gods to make it seem more from Homer's time period. He makes it clear that he feels the gods gave him divine powers in spite of his eyesight. They obviously favored him in his life and in works, and Keats makes references to Homer's writings because many of them took place on beaches and on the ocean. But you cannot understand this till you've heard the poem. So, I hope you enjoyed this dramatic reading of John Keats' poem, To Homer.
Standing aloof in giant ignorance, of thee I hear and of this I please, as one who sits ashore and longs perchance to visit dolphin coral in deep seas. So thou was blind, but then the veil was rent. For Jove, uncertain heaven, to let thee live. And Neptune made for thee a spongy tent, and Pan made sing for thee his forest hive. I, on the shores of darkness there is light, in precipices showed untrodden green. There is a budding morrow in midnight. There is a triple sight in blindness keen. Such seeing hast thou, as it once befell to Dian, queen of earth, and heaven, and hell! Damn you, Keats!
How wonderful! Now we end our writer bout with a little tidbit on Mary Shelley. Shelley was born in London to two rebels at the time. Her mother died soon after she was born, and her father had to raise her. Both her parents were famous authors, and Shelley began writing at an early age. She wrote her most famous work before she was 19, Frankenstein. Frankenstein was a very deep and involving story about a man by the name of Victor Frankenstein, who took an interest in the reanimation of the dead. He created a monster that symbolized all signs of human nature. He abandoned it into the wild, only to later find out it would come back and haunt him. Throughout the book, the monster was responsible for the deaths of many of Victor's family members and friends. This leads Victor to blame himself for these deaths and go into grieving many, many times. On outing, the monster finds Victor and confronts him. The monster has learned to speak English very well and tells Victor of his life. It asks him to create him a mate so he won't be so lonely. Victor stops in the middle of the process, and the monster swears revenge. The monster gets its revenge on Victor's wedding night when he kills Victor's new wife. When Victor discovers it also killed his longtime friend, he begins to hunt the monster down to kill it. After a very long journey to the frozen north, a sailor and his crew befriend him. Victor dies on the boat, and the monster is found crying at his bedside. It's a very emotional story. It explores the fallacies of human nature in a way few books do. I said fallacies. Now I hope you enjoyed the 30-second interpretation of Frankenstein by Mary Shelley.
What is this, some sort of narration thing? Alright, let's get it over with. The 30-second Frankenstein, not by Mary Shelley. Narrated by me as the Boom Guy. Guy gets interested in reanimation, creates the monster, gets scared, then sad, goes home because someone died, blames himself, gets sad again. Guy climbs the mountain and finds the monster. Monster wants a wife. Guy destroys wife. Monster gets angry. Guy gets married. Monster kills wife on wedding night. Guy is sad again. Guy's friend is killed by monster. Guy vows to kill monster. Guy goes up north to find some sailors. Guy dies while on the boat. Monster is sad that its creator is dead and runs away to die. Then, what's Finn?
End.
Huh?
End. Fin means end.
Oh! Finn.
Wow, that was something, Ed. Now it's time to abandon our writers and focus more on other things. William Blake was a very talented artist as well as a poet. He and his wife made a living by writing books and drawing pictures to go along with them. Basically picture books, but older and about things little kids were not interested in. Throughout most of his life, he was very poor and not a very good businessman, mostly because he made picture books for adults. His work went wildly unrecognized, and this caused a major depression later on in life. Eventually, like all people, he died, and was buried in an unmarked grave. To choose only one of Blake's works would do him injustice, so we chose the illustration of the Book of Job. Of course, the Book of Job is ironically about a guy named Job. You see, Job was a very lucky man. He was very wealthy and had a very loving family, and loved God immensely. And it was this love that led to his future problems. One day, the devil, or Lucifer as he'd like to be called, made a bargain with God. Lucifer said that Job could not love God as much as he does if everything he had were suddenly taken away from him. God agreed to this, and allowed Lucifer to remove everything Job had. The devil took away all his money and success, and he also killed off his entire family and all of his friends. Naturally, Job became very depressed. Despite all this, however, Job's faith and love for God remained. The devil then conceded to God, and God gave Job back all his money and possessions. He also gave him a new family and friends to love along with God. In the end, Job's faith was tested and he passed. The lesson taught was, of course, if you love God through both the good times and the bad, you will be greatly rewarded. Which is a very good lesson, and Blake obviously saw this. Now, watch this freaking sweet slideshow.
This freaking sweet slideshow. This engraving shows how happy Job is with his family, a scene they wish would never end. Unfortunately for Job, however, the devil has other plans. Here the devil is shown taking everything Job ever had away from him, turning his family against him, and killing off his herd. Tormented, Job sees a fake God above him. He refuses to give up his love and faith despite all that has happened. Finally, Job's suffering is over, and God returns what has been taken from him. God and Job are seen as equals in this engraving. As a reward, God shows Job the creation and meaning of life. Now Job is seen by God as better than before, and the peace and harmony that began the story has once again returned. Obviously, Blake had a keen ability to turn words into pictures.
Way to go, Billy boy. That means end.
And we're back. It looks like Claude is about to do another dance. He really is an amazing dancer. He's been doing this for about 3 days now. He's of course dancing to Franz Liszt's Rakowski March, which is one of Liszt's 15 Hungarian marches. That's correct, John. The march was very popular when it first came out, and one must pay careful attention to the transitions and variations in the tones. It has an almost mystical, fantastic beginning and fades into more harder, deeper middle. I think Litz was trying to tell us something. Oh, absolutely, Mike. The emotion is very high. Litz really wanted us to know what he was feeling. Unfortunately, sometimes interpretations are wrong. Who knows? He could have just thought it sounded good. Perhaps, but I like to believe he was conveying his emotions through his music. Well, believe what you want, Mike. I mean, it's a free country. Yeah, I know it's a free country. Stupid son. Oh, what's this? What's this? Some guy's walked out onto the stage. He looks little. He's gonna... Oh my god! He just kicked Maelstrom in the face! Well, he's down for the count. He's not getting back up. Oh, that's pretty sad. Horrible end to a interesting story. Very true. But I learned a lot. And now you're going to learn more about Litz. Litz was of course born in 1811 and was composing by the age of 12. It's hard to believe someone could be that gifted at such an early age, but he was an amazing person. Not only did he contribute with his own music, but he also decided to teach it to children. Wow! He died unfortunately in 1886, but he composed all the way to the end. You know, Claude looked like a real professional out there, unlike that Laughington Downbridge that hosted this thing. Well, you do realize Laughington's blind, right, John? No, Mike, I did not know that. Well, he's very self-conscious about it, and he wears the glasses only to make it appear as if he can see. He had his eyes closed through most of the documentary. Well, you learn something new every day. Very true. For the RBN, this is Mike. And John! Have a good night.